back, relax, and maybe get yourself a snack. Me and you gonna have a little chat about books. Hi guys, so I am here today to do a book review, and the book that I'm going to be reviewing is The Magician's Land, which is the third one in the Magician's trilogy by Lev Grossman. And I am pretty excited to talk to you guys about this one, because even though I really disliked the first one, the second one was really good, so I wasn't sure how this one was going to be going into it. I was hoping it was going to be more on the second one's level, and it definitely was, which was great. I found that my biggest problem with the first book was the lack of character development and characterization. I just felt like the characters were very one-dimensional and didn't grow a lot over the course of the story or learn from their mistakes. However, having now finished up the entire series, I do see why it was essential that Lev Grossman made those characters so one-dimensional in the first book. It does make sense in the grand context. I do still feel like he could have done a better job of it, but I definitely still understand why he chose to make such terrible characters, because it does make sense, because by the third book they really do progress into characters that we do root for and we do enjoy reading about. So I kind of retract my earlier 2-star rating, but I mean the book as a whole was a 2-star rating, so yeah, the series as a whole is much better than the first book on its own. This book in particular is quite interesting because we are following two different storylines which obviously converge at some point. The first one is involving Quentin, who has been our main character over the course of the series, and once again he has taken a completely different turn to what he imagined taking in his life. He definitely has quite a few moments where he has to change the whole course of his life in this series, and when we begin this book he is once again doing that, and he is on a whole new adventure which of course plays out in an entirely different way from what we were initially expecting when we began the series. I felt like with Quentin, this book was where he really settled into his role, understood who he was as a person, and was okay with that. He accepted, this is who I am, this is the sort of thing that I want to do, and I'm going to be fine with that, because up until this point he has complained a lot, he's not really known what direction to take with his life, but this book definitely helped him to find his own way and start doing his own thing and really following his own passions as opposed to other people and what they enforced on him. So I really, really enjoyed that. He definitely becomes a man, and he becomes an individual who is actually very interesting to read about as opposed to very whiny and annoying. I think he's a much better character now for all of the things he's gone through than he was in the first book. And although I really didn't like how he was portrayed in the first book, I feel like now it is explained that he is actually just quite a late bloomer and he doesn't really grow into himself until a lot later than other characters or other people. And it definitely takes more time for him to grow into the character that we know he could be. The other storyline is focused on Elliot, who is a character that we have seen before, and his storyline is focused within Fillory. He goes on some rather exciting adventures around Fillory, and he's definitely in the midst of a big crisis which starts happening very soon after the book begins. He learns a lot about the inner workings of Fillory and the way that things are and the different cultures and people within Fillory, because up until this point we've only seen a few, and in this book we get to see a couple more, which is great. I felt like he really became a genuine character and a character in his own right in this book, because even though he's mentioned in book 1 and 2, I didn't feel like he was really progressed as a character and like one that I could connect to, whereas now, because he had that storyline focused on him, I do feel like he became his own character and became an interesting one as well. The other characters as well who definitely get developed over the series, especially in this book, include Janet, who we also see a lot more of in this book, Alice, Julia and Quentin. All of them become decent, fun and entertaining characters. Even though they don't start off that way, all of them do grow into their roles. They are all just a bit late with it, and glad I did continue on with this series even though I really didn't like the first, because it does get a lot better. One thing I do have to mention, which did annoy me slightly, is that if you guys have read the Dangerous Women anthology, which is edited by George R.R. Martin and Gardner Dozois, then in that there is a story called The Girl in the Mirror, and that is by Lev Grossman. It was released before book 3 in the series, and that story is a complete copy of what is chapter 7 and 8 within book 3. So if you've read the anthology, chapter 7 and 8 of The Magician's Land, you might as well skip because they are identical. And I had already read the anthology, so I got to that point and was like, oh, deja vu, what's going on? Oh, yeah, I've already read this, it's the story from Dangerous Women. So that was a little bit annoying. I kind of wish that he had not just copied and pasted it. It had been a different perspective or something like that. but no. Anyway, so that was a small complaint that I have with the book, and that's why I didn't give it 5 stars, because it just, yeah, it's a bit annoying. On the whole, I felt like Lev Grossman's writing definitely progressed over the story and felt like he grew into the writing, he grew into the characters and made them more interesting and entertaining as it went, but it was a really slow beginning, so I would say you do have to force yourself through the first book a bit. I think he's really, really good at writing scenes and magic in particular and humour. He's very, very good at writing. I think there are moments which are really beautifully written, and there are some moments where I just really enjoyed seeing how he portrayed a certain thing. But equally, there are moments where I was like, this is a little bit boring, and particularly in the first book, that was the case. In terms of the plot and the ending of the book, I felt like it was a really good conclusion to the series, and there are some really, really clever tie-offs which we see. Throughout this whole series, there are a lot of references to other fantasy books and other fantasy writers, and I really enjoyed seeing that. I think that is an interesting element that he included. The world these characters are in, they're very aware of fantasy, they're aware that magic is a thing, and they're aware that equally there are made-up versions of magic. It was really interesting as a whole concept, and the story and the characters were good in this book and the second one. I did feel like the ending was a little bit abrupt. It kind of was all action, a lot of stuff was going on, and then suddenly it was kind of the end and everything finished and happy-go-lucky sunshine and rainbows. But yeah, it was kind of a little bit too abrupt. Although the ending was good, I just felt like it was very sudden. On the whole, book 2 and 3 were miles better than the first one, as you guys have probably guessed. I really enjoyed the second and third. I think if all 3 of them had been in one bind-up edition, it would have been a much, much better story. I think it works as a trilogy. It definitely doesn't work as single books. The first one would have put me straight off, and the only reason I continued was because I did this as a buddy read with various people who I'll link down below. But I did enjoy this one, and I thought that it was a much better progression of the characters and of the storyline, and everything came together much better. The pacing was a lot better, and I really enjoyed this. So I ended up giving this book a 4 out of 5 stars, which is what I gave the second one as well. And I would absolutely love to know your thoughts. If you have read this series, or if you've read only the first book and were put off by it, definitely leave me all of your thoughts below, because I would love to hear them. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you all very soon in another video. Bye! Me and you gonna have a little chat.